And we're live.
Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people doing incredible poetry readings. Hi, I love to read, but I do not like being read for filth. Hi, I'm Trey.
Oh,
And I am joined by a woman whose middle name is Poetry, my host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
hi, I'm Emily with a heart for rhyme. In poetry, I spend my time with passion aflame. I'll proudly proclaim poetry as my middle name.
Okay, I was not expecting that, and normally I'm the one who gives you something unexpected, and you now do that for me.
You're
Uh,
welcome for the Moira Rose accent.
Emily, I was so excited when you pitched this idea to me of having a poetry reading. Um, I am so excited for a number of reasons. One, because I truly love whenever we are able to do not only our conversations with our guests, but I love that we're able to bring people on and share their love of their own artistry with us as well. So truly, truly, I'm super excited, and I'm so glad you pitched it.
I am too. I was like, how do we do this? We've been doing this at the art lab every few months where we do like a poetry reading, and it's been super successful. We've brought in some amazing people that like we just opened it up to the public. I thought, how do we do this on the podcast? So here we are. We're doing it on the podcast. This is how we
Yeah.
figured it out. So very excited.
Yeah. On today's show, you are going to hear from some past guests that we've had on the podcast before, sharing their love of poetry and various readings across different kinds of media and artistry. So be prepared for a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this podcast. Just of a wonderful time reading a selected groupings of poetry and other stories. Up first, we do have Laura Packer to tell us a little bit more about why we tell stories.
Hello, modern romantic friends and family.
Hello.
I am sorry that I'm not there in person to share a poem with you, but I sent this recording so I can share one of my very favorites, and I hope you like it. Why We Tell Stories by Liesl Mueller. For Linda Foster. 1. Because we used to have leaves, and on damp days our muscles feel a tug, painful now, from when the roots pulled us into the ground. And because our children believe they can fly, an instinct retained from when the bones in our arms were shaped like zithers and broke neatly under their feathers. And because before we had lungs, we knew how far it was to the bottom as we floated open-eyed like painted scarves through the scenery of dreams, and because we awakened and learned to speak. 2. We sat by the fire in our caves, and because we were poor, we made up a tale about a treasure mountain that would open only for us. And because we were always defeated, we invented impossible riddles that only we could solve, monsters only we could kill, women who could love no one else. And because we had survived sisters and brothers, daughters and sons, we discovered bones that rose from the dark earth and sang as white birds in the trees. 3. Because the story of our life becomes our life. Because each of us tells the same story, but tells it differently. And none of us tells it the same way twice. Because grandmothers looking like spiders want to enchant the children, and grandfathers need to convince us what happened because of them. And though we listen only haphazardly with one ear, we will begin our story with the word and. Thank you so much. I hope you liked this. Why We Tell Stories by Liesl Mueller. I'm Laura Packer. Take care.
That was fabulous.
What I'm always awestruck by how marvelous a storyteller Laura is. Um, why we tell stories? We also tell stories because of Laura Packer.
Yes, she inspires us for sure.
Um, it's it is a very unique gift to be able to tell stories, and I love when other people share their tales with us. Which is why I'm so happy to have our next storyteller, our own Emily Poetry
Who's
Kramer.
that? Yeah, that's poetry is my middle name. Okay, well, I did prepare one. So, it's called Creative. You said you didn't have it. It was not even something you possessed. It was elusive, evasive, enigmatic, and you settled for less. It felt like you hoped. It felt like you just coped with a life less inclined to express itself, though you pined to be creative. You said you were going on a walk, just a short one to get some air. It was calming, cathartic, captivating. And you left it out there in the woods? When you found it in the forest, when the sun was filtering through the trees, lending its most golden moment at exactly 5:34 p.m. When you found it, did you feed it? Did you give it what it needed? The sustenance required to thrive, not just survive, to be creative. The end. Thank you.
It's so good.
Thank you.
I do want to ask Emily, who are some of your favorite authors or just favorite storytellers? Don't necessarily have to be poets or authors.
There's so many. Do you know some of my favorites are ones we've had on the show? Well, because I mean, why wouldn't we? I mean, that just makes sense, right? But
Yeah.
also, I enjoy a lot of the older classics. I love Oscar Wilde. I love Edgar Allan Poe. Of course, Tolkien. That's a big one. Um, and I find myself always leaning back toward that. I actually find it difficult to read a new author. And I don't want to be stuck in my ways. I do buy quite a few books, and I have obviously, I try to keep the ones here on my shelf that are people that have been on the show, which I think is really a fun collection to have as a separate shelf of that. Um, as far as poetry, there's so, I just I find myself just with a hunger for it all. So I
Mhm.
will read it, even though I have favorites. Um, I like being able to diversify in that realm, which is the opposite of reading a book. I realize that I'm a conundrum that way. Um, but yeah, I find that difficult. And oddly enough, I felt when I was young, I felt like I had to like Emily Dickinson because we have the same first name. And I was like, oh, I have to Emily Dickinson and I were going to be like BFFs in the poetry world, although she has passed. um, and I found that it was too dark, not too dark, but too like, I didn't like it when I was young.
Hmm.
There are
Mhm.
things now that I do like and can relate to even, but it she did that was sadly not a fate for us to be poetry BFFs. Sorry,
That
Emily. Maybe
no,
we'll meet one day.
I think sometimes, like I found listening to an album by Sarah Bareilles, who I admire as such a phenomenal storyteller through her music. There was an album of hers, I cannot remember the name of it, but I remember listening to it going, I don't necessarily relate to this. And previously I had like instantly related to the
Hmm.
songs. And then I came back 6 months later to that same album and was really listening to the lyrics and started to go, oh my God. So I think that all to say that maybe we encounter poets ahead of when we maybe needed to find them or could relate to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to revisit some past works and see if there's something new to discover or new experience to go through.
Your audio is gone?
I am sorry.
It's like it was suddenly super muffled. Yeah, I can't hear you. I'm
Hello?
sorry.
Testing?
Oh, that's better. And maybe it was a
Testing.
weird connection thing.
Might have been. We are having a slight storm, so future Emily, if you will edit this part out, please.
Yes.
So thank you. So all of that diatribe to say, maybe now is maybe not the time that you needed to find that author, but give it some time and revisit authors that you maybe didn't have a past connection with, and you now start to have that connection with. An author who we've previously had on the podcast before that we're so excited to have back on with us today. Without further introduction, Kurt Ward. Hello, Kurt.
Yay.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Well, without further ado, Kurt, the stage is yours.
Well, you make me want to recite Emily Dickinson now after that.
Oh, well, you're welcome to.
I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? No, what I'd love to do is just share with you two short pieces from my book, Endymion, State of Entropy,
Which is
and
also
then I
right
have
there.
I have a ballad that's never been heard before, which I thought I would share.
Ooh.
Very
But
exciting.
we'll start with Endymion, and just to set the context, it's the third act where Hermes, who is the messenger between the supernal world and the real world, and Endymion, who is a poet shepherd, are having a discussion in Rome. It's literally at John Keats' grave. Long story, but you'd have to check it out to figure out why, but that's where it's set. So I thought I would give you two, one from Hermes, one from Endymion, just to give a feel, and that's where it is.
Okay.
So this is Hermes. Like orphans, we look into the arms of the night, drowning in the uncertainty of our own reflection. Between dog and wolf, we are born unbidden, shadows from out the distant flame. Looking forward, we look back again. Sedentary slumbers, lethargic rites, memories gleam past like the receding tides. What is unwritten is unseen. The future is an illusion, neither what is nor what should be. And then Endymion responds, I stand upon a solitary shore, thirsting with insatiable drought, for one sign of redemption to quiet this obstinate doubt, to know that birth and life are more than the sum of our conceded arts, to reconcile the impermanence of all things against our everlasting desire. We are rooted in reverie, confined in conceits of pride. The hypocrisy of knowledge is the futility for the divine. Perhaps only in death is there meaning in life. I realize now this is a bit somber for Sunday at noon in the United States, but it's 7 p.m. in Europe, so there you go. And the next piece is this is one of my this is a Gothic ballad, and I should say that it was written a good 10 years before Tim Burton's The Corpse's Bride. So if you hear the familiar title, I didn't steal it. It's a completely different thing, but it's just so similar that I thought I'd bring it up. It's called The Bride of the Buyer. It was a somber night of autumn when the moon and clouds and shadows play, and darkness weaves a veil so solemn that whispers are heard in the beating of the rain. In the distance, the thunder is calling, the wind-swept leaves echo its ghastly refrain, and in the town, the church bells were calling. The knight was on his way. 4 years he battled in the wars and braved the Saracen blade. Now with his glory and his spoils, he returned to wed his promised maid. For service to the king she was betrothed, and as he rode to bring all Christendom fame, he gave her a band of gold and left her in the charge of his trusted page, who greeted her each morning with a lily and a rose at the end of each day. But soon a fierce love between them had grown. They swore none would take away. They went to hear the nightingale sing where no ring was heard of that warning bell, when the night happened upon them as riding, as they softly embraced in the dell. He did not give them a welcome greeting. He did not bid them well. Soon a cry was heard through the forest resounding. The page, by that noble sword, had fell. Into her arms he sunk bleeding, and there they sighed their last farewell. She cursed his honor as he swung her on his steed, and then she was silent as they galloped towards the feast. They dressed her in a gown of white. They placed jasmine in her hair, and I lost my place. I got so into it, I lost my place. Yeah, they braided her hair with jasmine. They dressed her in a gown of white. Rose hips flushed her cheeks, and an ivory veil hid her sorrow from sight. When the priest asked her to affirm her vows, she turned from the altar and cried, "Death alone I shall wed tonight." Out of the chapel she ran, into the arms of a tempest, where a black coach awaited, drawn by imps and satyrs. She donned a claret gown, a cowl of raven's feathers that stood high above her brow. Her lips were dyed with oxblood, her face was pale as a swan, and black widow spiders weaved her a silken train, and on her head a thorny crown. They led her to that blood-stained ground, they led her to where her lover lain. She kissed him gently on the brow, and when she laid herself full down, death sealed their nuptial grave. That was it.
Very good. Very well done. Even though you lost your place, it was
Yes.
beautiful.
It's funny because I wrote this 30 years ago, and it's been in my head for 30 years, and I've repeated it often and often. And then because of this session, I thought I'd clean it up a little bit. And so so that's why it was a little new. But yeah, that's my ultra Gothic ballad, which was totally inspired, of course, by Alfred Noyes, the Highwayman, which I recited before. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we were able to give you a reason to dust it off a little, and hopefully we can do this again. Did you have any other pieces for us?
No. I thought
Okay.
that would be somber enough. Hopefully your next guest will bring some light.
Based on my list, I think that may be true.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining us. And for our listeners, quick, tell our listeners where they can find you and your work.
www.kurtrward.com, Kurt with a K.
Yes.
And you can find it you can order it at all bookstores and Amazon and everywhere else. If you just look it up. It's called Endymion of the State of Entropy.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Have a
Thank you,
wonderful
Court.
evening.
Have a great show.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Whoops. Sorry, Trey.
You're good.
Oops. There we go. We brought.
We were
We did it.
switching.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, it's all good. I gotta say, I love the different perspectives that we're gonna have on the show. Um, there, it, oh, dang it, I had a thought and then it left me. Oh, it's fine. It'll come back to me. So I just, that's the thing that I love about bringing so many different perspectives is that we get to hear so many different styles, so many different viewpoints, and I think that's kind of what contributes to the love of artistry is that nothing is ever exactly the same, and that's what makes it so fun and interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I like when people share works that they wrote themselves, it gives you a little piece of them, which is the same as if you're delivering something you wrote. It's a little piece of you, which is why I think it's so hard for people to read their own work, because at least for me, it's it's nerve-wracking enough maybe to read in public for many people and to speak in public, but when you're sharing something that you wrote, it is super vulnerable, and your audience doesn't always see it that way. They're just taking in like what, like a performance. But when it's something that you wrote, it feels like you're giving up like this, you're letting people see a bit of your actual soul, and you're putting it out there, and it feels like you're putting it out there for like complete open judgment, and you kind of are, but
Hmm.
I have to tell you, the first few times you do it, if you're not practiced at doing it, it is worth it.
Yes.
And it is worth doing it anyway. And it's scary and it's difficult and petrifying even, but do it anyway, because you should go live out loud, and that's one way to do it.
I completely 100% agree. With the theater background that I've talked about way too many times for me to just get into that now. The other thing that I think might also be helpful is to let someone else read your work and read it out loud to you in their own interpretation.
That feels scary too.
It is. But I also think about like people like Sondheim, where the thought of Sondheim's works in general, his works get interpreted so many different ways, and there isn't necessarily a wrong way to interpret it. It's giving your narrator a particular perspective, and then it's allowing someone else to interpret that and give their own viewpoint from what you've written. And that can sometimes change the meanings of work. So yes, definitely 100% scary, but also worth a different viewpoint to explore. I think that is going to be a lovely segue to our next guest today. We have the incomparable Lisa Bowman. Hello, Lisa.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Good to
How are
see
you?
Yeah, how delightful.
Well, I did not write these poems. Would that I had. I chose them because at one point they are somewhat in style diametrically opposed, and yet they both so beautifully address getting older, maturing. And the first is Emily Dickinson.
Yay.
I thought I would honor you.
I feel a theme here. This is great.
I've loved her since I was in grade school when I first read her. And the second one is by Lucille Clifton, who is more contemporary. She died in 2010. We'll start with Emily because she is chronologically and slightly more intellectually relevant right now. I Could Not Prove the Years Had Feet by Emily Dickinson. I could not prove the years had feet, yet confidently they run. Am I from symptoms that are past and series that are done? I find my feet have further goals. I smile upon the aims that felt so ample yesterday. Today's have vaster claims. I do not doubt the self I was competent to me, but something awkward in the fit proves that outgrown I see. The second one by Lucille Clifton, if I could get the page to turn here, is entitled There is a Girl Inside. There is a girl inside. She is randy as a wolf. She will not walk away and leave these bones to an old woman. She is a green tree in a forest of kindling. She is a green girl in a used poet. She has waited patient as a nun for the second coming, when she can break through gray hairs into blossom. And her lovers will harvest honey and thyme, and the woods will be wild with the damn wonder of it. To fill you in on Lucille Clifton, she was born in 1936, died in 2010, and she was Poet Laureate in Maryland for 5 years, and she was also nominated twice for a Nobel Prize in Poetry. And she is, to me, she happens to be Black, but to me, she's a little reminiscent of Maya Angelou. There's something in there, that earthiness, and I feel that the intellectual, we have many sides to us, but two of them, of course, are intellectual, and then that inner passion. And I think you need both sides to encompass maturity. That's why I chose those.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That was great. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be with you. This is wonderful. I love that poem that Kurt, his own poetry that he just read. Fantastic.
Yeah, he's fabulous too. Because you also write books, I would like to share with our audience how they can find and support you as well.
Oh, I'm just about to publish the second in the trilogy on Queen Margaret. I should be in the next 2 months. Should be online.
Exciting.
On Amazon. Yeah. So it's Saint Margaret, Queen of Scotland.
Very nice. Can't
This
wait for
book
that.
covers the Norman Conquest, so there's blood and gore, which I just love.
That is very unexpected, and I love it.
Oh, if you knew me better.
Oh, this is great. I can't wait for it then.
So thank you for letting me read those two brilliant poems.
Yeah, thank you for reading them.
you.
What
My
great
pleasure.
choices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Just, I mean,
I love her.
oh, I can't say this enough. I love how just incredible these people are that we have on this show today. So to all of our guests, those that are coming up, and to those that I've read, again, thank you so much for being on with us today. And to our viewers, thank you for listening in today. It is so wonderful to be able to share this with you all. Up next, we have Jacob.
Yay.
Hello.
Hi, Jacob.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Kristen should also be here.
Okay. Well, we can chat for a minute until she gets here.
She is.
Oh, she is.
She was looking
Hooray.
confused at the thing, going, "Why am I not next?"
But she is here.
Hi guys!
Hi.
Hi.
We actually all four get to be on at the same time this time.
Right?
How wonderful.
Amazing.
First of all, I love these two individuals that we have here. They stream their current playthrough of the World of Orda. I believe it's still on Sundays, correct?
Our D&D game?
Yes.
That's actually on pause. We finished.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's my bad. I forgot to update the Twitch channel. We are currently streaming our playthrough of Baldur's Gate,
Oh gosh,
which involves a
that's not
lot
going
of
great.
dying.
Can confirm,
Yeah.
but still so wonderful. But it's so much fun to get to listen to you all, even with your past playthroughs of the things that you're doing, because it not only impacts your live D&D playthrough, but it's also impacting the way that your story that you're also working on.
Yes.
Which I think is an incredible process that not many people know of, but should definitely check out.
Yeah.
But
Jacob, I love that you joined us with the super asleep dog behind you.
I
That
can't
is-
control where she just flops herself.
I hope nobody tries to walk through that door.
Nah.
No, we're all home.
Okay.
well, Jacob, Kristen, I will pass it off to you. What selections do you have for us today?
I'll let
Do you-
Kristen introduce what it
You're
is.
gonna-
Since I'm going to
Okay.
be reading the first one.
So the first three pieces that we have for you are 100-word stories, the microfiction. We submitted them for a challenge, and I'm just so thrilled with them that I was like, we have to share these. So they're little bite-sized stories that are literally only 100 words long,
Cool.
Or less.
and they or less, yeah, fewer.
Fine.
And they're all set in Orda, and we decided to pick kind of our lore topics. So these are part of like expanded lore. They're not going to be explicitly addressed in the books. It's just like, this is the sort of thing that you would, buy the lore book for and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Okay.
So the first one, I guess, is from sorry, we didn't practice this part.
That's
We
okay.
practiced reading them, and I was like, we should probably introduce them. So the first one is from the perspective of the world deity, is what I'll say, and then the second two are from two of the deities of sound.
Oh, I guess now.
Now that's you, yeah. Action.
The spirit of the world mourns its closest companion. The corpse of the great bear decays beyond the edge of the disk, just out of reach. Baleful moans fade across the cosmos. Ages pass, Urda spins, closer, closer, till Erdima makes contact once more and breathes. There is no saving Cavania, but from death springs new life. Cavania's corpse births a new race. Grotesque newborns wriggle from brain and heart matter. From the eyes, teeth, and intestines they grow. Wisdom, power, and cunning matures in these foundlings. They gather in 4 circles. They heed the spirit. Through the Fae, Cavania lives. Yeah, so that's Erdima, the world tree's animal companion in a sense. Cavania, the great bear, died and gave birth to the Fae of our world.
Fascinating.
That's so cool.
I see this being a challenge with only 100 words to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But it was
like,
so
how
much
do you
fun.
get everything across? But
So why do you I guess you would just type that in like a document and then let it count the words
yeah,
and adjust accordingly.
and then panic as it's getting higher and higher, and you're like, I haven't gotten to the point.
Right. Well, I actually typed it in the word processor that I usually draft in, and then I copy and paste it into a word counter. And then
okay.
it tells me you're at 120 words. And I'm like, crap. Okay.
Yeah. It reminds me of that quote of I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one.
Yep.
That's my life.
Yep.
If I can over-explain, I will.
Right.
It's one of my best qualities.
Right. It's interesting because Laura Packer had a storytelling class, and in the class, she said, if you end up with a story that's too long, take like the 3 points you want from the story and write those as like quick little bullet points, no sentences, just quick little bullet points, and then grow it from there. And that will bring the story down to only what's absolutely necessary. But that's still hard because you want to include all this cool detail and all the things
Right.
that you
But
think
this supports
matters.
this, and this supports this, and this supports this. And like fans are going to go crazy when they see this.
Right. And here's the plot twist, and now I can. Yeah. Yep. Totally relatable.
Oh, so the next one involving the deities of sound. Comprehension seeps through the being of pure sound as they enter the perversely silent ruby chamber. Hope of parley with the dragon deity wanes with their strength as the chamber seals, devouring their essence. The end trudges on as extemporizations of what may have been pulse through Soe's mind. One last bid for peace. Soe implores Dathi. Don't tell Fie. The chamber swallows their crystalline soprano voice before it shakes, the only evidence of Dathi's rumbling laughter. His mind whispers to Soe as it fades. Fie is next. A wobbly moan serves as Soe's only reply. Fie, forgive him. So that one was
Yeah.
real, the struggle between some of the deities as they sort of make their, carve out their piece of our world, Urda, and how they interact. And the dragons aren't big fans of the deities of sound.
That is fascinating. It makes me feel like I want more of the story. Like in general, I want to dive into this.
You did it, Tristan.
Fist bump.
Was that kind of the goal of writing these shorter versions of that, to kind of like leave people wanting more, or what was the thought process behind that?
A little bit. It also, I played a ton of Destiny, and it kind of reminded me of the little lore tags that you would get with, like, you know, an exotic piece of armor. And that always left me intrigued, wanting more, but also enriched the gameplay.
Yep.
Because then the more you read, the more, especially if it's like a themed set, you start to follow the story a little bit. And that was how they had to tell the story in the first game, which was like frustrating, but also like they made the best of what they had, and it was kind of cool. So that is kind of the idea behind these. It's kind of like what you said, Emily, that we could flesh out the story, but it's been distilled so well into these 100 pieces that, like, yeah, we'll definitely explain it at some point in a more complete context, but not till much later,
right.
because there's a book about it or 3. Yeah.
That's very cool. And Josh said, I was just thinking exactly about the lore nuggets in Destiny. Good old D1 days.
Right.
Yep. He's a Destiny fan. I've played 2, but only Destiny 2.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, since we chatted last, that maybe you have a bigger family.
Yes. Yep, that's my baby.
That's so wonderful.
My husband is trying to, thank you, trying to keep her occupied while we're hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you were able to do that. And
yeah,
thank you for sharing. Did you have any others before we go? I
Yeah.
didn't want to. Okay, yeah, go for it.
Oh, I forgot to give the titles of these.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Just read your third one, Jacob.
Okay, yeah. Basically a continuation of the second one. In a way. The elder dragon sneers at the other deities' challenge. You scorn the wish of your fallen? Fie's voice thunders across the plains. Zoe's dream died with them. They rampage across the world's disk in battle. Mountains split, hills become valleys, islands disappear. Rage unsatisfied, Fie glares down at the dragon's unmoving form, resisting their urge to utterly destroy. Balance being preserved. Erdema decides which branches are pruned. A glimmer catches Fie's eye. They reach down and wrench a vaguely bell-shaped bone from Dothy's ear. Fie nods. This toll will protect mine, even as it shames you.
So Fie is the elven deity of war and death. So probably the wrong one to pick a fight with.
Maybe.
Are
Unless
you
you're
brave
brave
or
enough.
foolish?
Yeah. Right.
I do have to ask, like, in terms of creating some of these deities or looking for that, can I ask, where did some of this inspiration come from?
Well, it's hard trying to, because I know
Where did it come
got
from,
the short short time slot.
There's a background in 5th edition D&D called, I don't even remember what it's called. Do you
Inheritor.
Inheritor.
Well, that's
So
going way back.
Well,
Is
that's
that
the
what you're
inspiration.
asking about, or were you talking about the deities?
So the inspiration came from that. She picked Inheritor, and I asked her what did she inherit, and she's like, I don't know. You don't even, it's a thing. So she inherited a bell, and then it's like, okay, well, she's half elf, and the bell came from the elves. So why did the elves have bells? They are beings of sound. Okay, so their deities are beings of sound. And so it all sprawled from that initial question.
And since the deities are beings of sound, all of their names are inspired by solfege.
Oh,
So we have Doe, Mie, Tea, Fie, Soe, Rhea. And it's not obviously not just the diatonic scale. We took the chromatic scale because also it's inspired by what's his name?
Scriabin.
Scriabin's Mystic Chord,
oh, okay.
and they're
So-
just called the Mystic Chord.
Okay.
Lifted that.
I'm gonna be music nerding out when I'm reading this, aren't I?
Yeah, 100%. It is like I studied opera for 10 years. It wasn't gonna not happen. I have so much fun writing some of this. Somebody like, ah.
Incidentally, that's how I play piano.
Oh,
So yeah, music nerds, D&D nerds. There's stuff in our books for nerds of all kinds.
oh,
It
God.
is written for the nerds.
This makes my heart happy.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
joining
for having us. This is such a great idea.
How wonderful to hear that. We will probably do it again. This
Perfect,
it's been
because we've
great
got
so
more.
far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Did you have any more you wanted to read today?
But if you guys need to move on to your next time slot, I totally understand.
Let me look.
We've actually got 2 more pieces that are actually poetry.
We're okay with you reading
It says
that.
other readings.
You can do
That's
at least
true.
one. So go for
Okay,
it.
I'll do the short one. I actually wrote this poem, so there's actually a lot of poetry in our books. I like writing poetry. So this one is called The Well-Meaning Clangor, and it's written by one of the auxiliary antagonists in the book about one of the protagonists. On the cusp of triumph, the menace emerges. Deaf to his obstinance, progress halts, strife surges, yet the next movement blooms, relentless as dirges, apt.
Hmm.
And I actually developed that poetry form myself. What's something that's been a lot of fun in. Wait, did you?
Yeah,
I don't. We developed it together. Sorry, but I was thinking while I was writing it, I was like, what would it be really cool to like? What would the poetry forms of the elves be? So just asking myself questions like that, not taking for granted, like, oh, I'm gonna write it in this meter with this rhymes or with these rhymes and rhyming couplets and blah blah blah. Just like, well, what would they do? Like just based on what they believe about their origins and their deities and their values. So it was a lot of fun to develop.
Yeah.
What
how
is it?
fascinating.
And what is it?
Yeah,
we
developed this form.
The poetry form.
won't
Yeah,
tell you
we
what it is, but we
decided
did it.
it's called a Selindar, which our conlang right now. It's still in development, but basically we take pieces of Gaelic, and we just kind of either swap some letters or mix some sounds around. And so "say" is like a syllable from the word 6 or 7. "Lin" is a syllable from the word for line, and then "dar" is poem. So it translates literally to 6-line poem or 7-line poem.
Oh,
Because it's 6 lines of 6 syllables and then one final line of 1 syllable.
Yes.
Oh, fascinating.
And then the rhyming couplets are also like staggered. This will be for you, Trey, based on which deities are harmonious with each other.
Oh my goodness.
And which ones are like I looked for a rhyme that's like almost offensive with the other rhyme for any of the deities that are like dissonant with each other. And yeah, this is intense poetry writing, guys.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun. I have so much fun.
It's like poetryception, where it's like so much additional storytelling and thought in the background happening. Man.
okay.
I feel like Kurt Ward should be here for this. So Kurt, if you're still listening. Wow.
Oh my God.
We need to have like one massive podcast of people where we need to all be in the same room at the same time.
Right. Just nerd out together.
Wow.
Okay. Yep. I can't wait for this because I can't also wait to do an hour-long deep dive into this and be like
Right.
analyzation of everything, and then
Right?
have you respond to it on TikTok and be like, "Yes, that's exactly
You
it."
got it. It's like, yay!
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yep.
So Kristen, Jacob, I want to make sure that our listening audience can connect with you. Where can our listening audience find you, either on social media or find your written works?
Yeah, so we are World of Urda, URDA, everywhere. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We post our chapters to our website, which is worldofurda.com, and we also post it to our Wattpad. So you can actually read our chapters right now as we're like kind of working and developing. And if you check them out and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see, what happens with this, then that will be helpful for us. And we'll be like, okay, got to make sure we resolve that.
Yeah.
Don't forget about that one, because these books are massive.
Oh yeah.
They're massive and they're so intricate. And it's like, okay, we got to remember to, where did that line go? Did we drop it somewhere? And we just love interacting and nerding out with people. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's more fun together.
Go find them, interact, keep them on their toes. Make sure
Right.
they wrap up the loose ends.
Yeah.
And also, don't forget to music theory the heck out of their poetry, please.
Right. Apparently,
If you think there's symbolism there probably is.
there probably is.
Mhm. Well, thank you both so much for sharing that with us. I really look forward to reading more of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
That was so amazing. My mind is still blown.
Uh-huh.
I didn't. I'm so glad that they took the time to explain that, because we would have just been like, "Oh, that was really amazing," but no, explaining it and now understanding. Now I want to I wish I had to read it again. So, anybody who's listening or watching, if you're watching the pre-recorded version of this, rewind, listen to her read it again. I can just paste it in here. We're gonna have her read it again. Here it is. Anyway, are you still blown away as well?
A little bit, yeah. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna be thinking about this for the rest of the podcast. So without further ado, we're gonna bring on our next guest that I'm so excited is coming back here with us from Fell and Fair. I'm very pleased to announce Zan Campbell.
Hello there.
Yay!
Hello.
Thanks for joining us again.
So
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Hooray!
I'm so excited.
This
Yes.
is
I always love hopping on here. And yeah, thank you for having me back. And Trey, have we talked about how amazing the Carolina Gamecocks are? Like, have we connected over this yet? Did we talk
oh,
about
I
this
don't
last time?
think so.
No, but I'm gonna admit something right now. This sweatshirt is just really comfy, and I look good in scarlet. So that's the
Okay.
only reason
Well,
I have it.
You do look good in Scarlet, so
Thank you.
Better than Carolina Blue, right?
absolutely. From the lesser Carolina. No offense to our friends from North Carolina.
I can get on board with this discussion.
Let's not say it too loud, because every time I wear this out in public, I normally get stopped and someone says, I think that looked better in orange. Like,
yes. Well,
no.
Yes. Well, lies and deceit are, proliferated throughout the world.
That's right.
Actually, I will be honest, it's fun to kind of razz people with it, but South Carolina's been so terrible at pretty much every sport, except for we're really good at women's basketball. But otherwise, much of my pride has been subsumed. We're not here to talk about universities' athletics as much.
That's true. We'll have a whole nother show about that.
Exactly.
Well, Zane, can I ask, what did you have prepared for us today?
Absolutely. I am super excited to share this. So this is not something new. I think we actually talked about this when I was on the podcast last time, but when given the opportunity to read poetry, I decided that The Ballad of the White Horse by G.K. Chesterton, which is an epic poem, it's a ballad that I have loved for a long, long time. I just wanted to read a selection from it. I can't read the whole thing because that would take several hours, but hopefully it will inspire all of you to go out there and read it. And what I really love about this piece is that it pulls from so much of human lore, as it were. There's so much that's referential to history, to mythology, to mysticism, and all of these elements that are kind of combined. It is about a historical event, but if you read Chesterton's kind of historical preface, he basically says there is no historical preference because this does not claim to be history. This basically, his point was that the impact in history that is greatest here is the legends that were passed down. And so he's kind of summarizing and encapsulating the legends around this time period of the Danish invasion and King Alfred and his defense of England. And I was going to read, even the dedication is actually phenomenal, but I tried reading through it 3 times because I was going to include that, but I cried every time. So we're going to skip that. You guys can read it. It's phenomenal. But Chesterton does this amazing thing where he very rarely wastes a verse. He's pulling from so much of human history, so much from human mythology, especially of the Norse and the English, and even the Romans, and it combines to make this really powerful sentiment. So what I'm going to read is kind of the first quarter of the first section, because there's about 8 sections, and basically the foundation for this is kind of the legend of King Alfred, the King of England, who was the king during the Danish and Norse invasion, what we call the Viking invasion of the great heathen army into England. And it kind of picks up at the moment where things are really going bad for Alfred. One by one, the kingdoms of the Saxons have fallen to the Danes. They are being overrun at the same time. The really interesting thing about this is that in many senses, they're living in what they would consider a post-apocalyptic environment where Rome has fallen. The Saxons are living amongst ruins where they look up and see aqueducts and they see these buildings that they can never even dream of building. So it's in the same way where, a huge part of our modern genre is the post-apocalyptic fantasy, post-apocalyptic fiction. This is almost like, 9th century post-apocalyptic stuff where they see these towering obelisks and stuff around them, these statues that they could never carve. And they feel like civilization has fallen and they're just kind of keeping back the zombie horde in the form of this barbarian invasion to the north. J.R.R. Tolkien was a huge fan of Chesterton and especially this work. He did in his later years actually have a note where he said the thing that he was discontent most about it was the fact that it's not very historically accurate and that he felt like Chesterton didn't have a full understanding of Norse culture and Norse mythology. So we'll have to forgive him a little bit there. But this is from kind of the English, West Saxon perspective, where as the legends are passed down, the Vikings are kind of this boogeyman that's out there. So there's not a real humanization of them. And so we have to understand that when we read the poem. But with that large preface, I'm going to hop into it and we're going to enjoy it. And then I guess we can talk about it if we have time at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here we go.
Cool.
The Ballad of the White Horse by G.K. Chesterton. Part 1, The Vision of the King. Before the gods that made the gods had seen their sunrise pass, the white horse of the White Horse Vale was cut out of the grass. Before the gods that made the gods had drunk at dawn their fill, the white horse of the White Horse Vale was hoary on the hill. Age beyond age in British lands, eons and eons gone, was peace and war in western hills, and the white horse looked on. For the white horse knew England when there was none to know. He saw the first oar break or bend. He saw heaven fall and the world end. Oh God, how long ago? For the end of the world was long ago, and all we that dwell today, like children of some second birth, like a strange people left on earth after a judgment day. For the end of the world was long ago, when the ends of the worlds waxed free, when Rome was sunk in a waste of slaves, and the sun drowned in the sea. When Caesar's sun fell out of the sky, and whoso hearkened right could only hear the plunging of the nations into night. When the ends of the earth came marching in to torch and crescent gleam, and the roads of the world that led to Rome were filled with faces that moved like foam, like faces in a dream. And men rode out of eastern lands, broad river and burning plain, trees that are Titan flowers to see, and tiger skies striped horribly with tints of tropic rain, where in's enameled peaks arise around that inmost one, where ancient eagles on its brink, vast as archangels, gather and drink the sacraments of the sun. And men break out of northern lands, enormous lands alone, where a spell is laid upon life and lust, and the rain is changed to a silver dust, and the sea is a great green stone. And a shape that moveth murkily in mirrors of ice and night hath blanched with fear all beasts and birds, as death and the shock of evil words blast a man's hair with white. And the cry of the palms and the purple moons, or the cry of the frost and foam, swept ever around an inmost place, and the din of distant race on race cried and replied round Rome. And there was death upon the emperor, and night upon the pope, and Alfred, hiding in deep grass, hardened his heart with hope. A sea folk blinder than the sea broke all about his lands, and Alfred up against them bare and gripped the ground and grasped the air, staggered and strove to stand. He bent them back with spear and spade, with desperate dike and wall, with foemen leaning on his shield and roaring on him when he reeled, and no help came at all. He broke them with a broken sword, a little towards the sea, and for 1 hour of panting peace ringed with a roar that would not cease, with golden crown and girded fleece, made laws under the tree. The Northmen came about our land, a Christless chivalry, who knew not of the arch or pen, great, beautiful, half-witted men from the sunrise and the sea. Misshapen ships stood on the deep, full of strange gold and fire, and hairy men as huge as sin with horned heads came wading in through the long, low sea mire. Our towns were shaken of tall kings with scarlet beards like blood. The world turned empty where they trod, and they took the kindly cross of God and cut it up for wood. Their souls were drifting as the sea, and all good towns and lands they only saw with heavy eyes and broke with heavy hands. Their gods were sadder than the sea, gods of a wandering will, who cried for blood like beasts at night, sadly from hill to hill. They seemed as trees walking the earth, as witless and as tall, yet they took hold upon the heavens, and no help came at all. They bred like birds in English woods, and rooted like the rose, when Alfred came to Athelney to hide him from their bows. There was not English armor left, nor any English thing, when Alfred came to Athelney to be an English king. For earthquake swallowing earthquake uprent the Wessex tree. The whirlpool of the pagan sway had swirled his sire as sticks away when a flood smites the sea. And the great kings of Wessex wearied and sank in gore, and even their ghosts in that great stress grew grayer and less, with the lords that died in Lyonesse, and the king that comes no more. And the god of the golden dragon was dumb upon his throne, and the lord of the golden dragon ran through the woods alone. And if he ever climbed that crest of luck and set his flag before, returning as a wheel returns, came ruin and the rain that burns, and all began once more. And naught was left King Alfred but shameful tears of rage, in an island in a river, in the end of all his age. And we'll leave it there.
Wow.
So
I
if you
think-
want to find out the rest of the story, keep reading.
Okay. Yeah, it makes me want to. I think my favorite part of that was that he hardened his heart with hope.
Hmm.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it's an incredible story as you read through it of a character who has lost everything, absolutely everything, and kind of this desperate striving for and grasping. It's really cool. The next section goes on as he kind of begins to rally the people of England. And Chesterton does this really cool thing where because he says, this invasion lasted over 100 of years. There were lots of people that kind of participated in this. But he takes 3 chieftains, one that is a Saxon chieftain, one that is a Briton, a Gaelic chieftain, and one that is were the vestiges of one of the Roman descendants, like a chieftain there. So it's kind of this combined, these people that had kind of fought and engaged with each other over the years, but how the history of Britain is summed up with the Gaels, the Saxons, and the Romans, and how they kind of come together to stand against the invasion. But it's very, very, one thing that I love about it is it's very encouraging, inspiring for those who are desperately fighting against all odds. I think that these sort of stories have an amazing power to encourage us and inspire us, because often we would rather take the challenges that we have today and trade them for another set of challenges. I mean, I think most of us, there's days where we're like, I would rather stand in a Viking shield wall right now and just deal with the people charging down the hill at me than have to figure out, the tax code or whatever, right? But the reality is, whether it was 1,000 years ago or today, we have challenges that face us and things we have to overcome. And, seeing a character that can harden their heart with hope can just bring you a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, the world is like almost literally falling apart around him, and this is the stance this is the attitude he decides to take, and I thought that was fabulous, and that does make me want to read more, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. That was
absolutely
powerful.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's a great piece, and it's one that I think that, especially for people that, you were talking earlier about how, at different stages you may find and appreciate an author that maybe you didn't appreciate. And I feel like in many ways Chesterton has become more relevant. And it's something that, as I've grown older, I've appreciated his work more and more, where he was able to kind of take so much of human history and mythology and emotion and sentiment and boil it down into a story of a broken man who broke the enemy with a broken sword, which is just so powerful.
Yeah, and he didn't give up, even though he has a sword that's broken too. Like, I love every little bit, and like you said, he doesn't waste a verse.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, it's a fascinating, the interesting kind of historical note about this is, they had already seen the collapse of Rome, which was the peak of human civilization to that point, right? And it came in basically waves after waves of barbarian invasion over and over and over again. And one of the interesting things about the Battle of Ethandune, which is kind of the climactic moment of this, and just like, in real history, it's a little more nuanced, but the point remains that basically if Alfred hadn't, won at Ethandune, probably what would have happened was the Vikings would have taken over England and would have doubled their raids on France and would quickly have conquered it. And springing from England, where they were safe and had this massive resource base. And it probably would have basically what we, think of as the Dark Ages or, the Middle Ages, it would have really confirmed and doubled down on the basically setting the world back even further. And so there's a strong argument to make that the Battle of Ethandune actually probably saved, the progress of Western civilization for quite some time. And interestingly enough, it also unified England because Guthrum, the king of the Danes, signed a peace treaty with Alfred after that and basically brought most of the Danes into the fold. And it was a very interesting kind of pivotal moment. Another thing that I really like about Alfred is, for those that know a little bit about my story, I was actually medically retired from the military with an autoimmune disorder called ulcerative colitis. And King Alfred the Great, they actually had ulcerative colitis. He was, and he didn't have the modern medicine that we had and stuff. So he suffered from this kind of wasting autoimmune disorder his whole life. And so that's always personally inspiring for me to see somebody who, with health issues like that continued to fight for his people and for his, when he had nothing left. Like, there's a point where, he wasn't getting out of it what a king usually gets out of it. He wasn't getting, the wealth, and he wasn't like, he was living in a swamp, trying to save his people. And it's just very encouraging for folks that do struggle with health issues or do struggle with odds that seem much greater than they are. So
Yeah. Wow. Josh said, inspiration for Weekend Warrior 2, perhaps?
I would, well, so, we've actually, this is a whole nother thing. We can talk about another, but no, we actually, our goal, we've recently launched, we've done Weekend Warrior for 8 years. We're all launching additional events in the Weekend Warrior universe. We also now have our historical universe, which we started with our first event, War of the Barons, this last year. But we hope in the next 2 to 3 years to launch an event that we're calling Sword Thane, which is the Viking invasion of England. So it will be the Vikings versus the Saxons. It'll have a lot of that history and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, you're spot on. It won't be Weekend Warrior, but it will be one of our historical events where you can come and stand in the shield wall and you can look from Alfred's hood, literally. So, yeah.
So cool. And for the people listening, where can they find out more about that?
Felonfair.com is going to be our hub. You can also check out weekendwarriorexperience.com, warofthebarons.com. And then if you want our look at our product line and that sort of stuff, shop.felonfair.com are our various ways you can get a hold of us. Also, Instagram at felonfair is kind of our central hub, so you can find everything there.
Okay, good. I didn't want to miss talking about that. And since Josh brought up Weekend Warrior, which I believe tickets go on sale like tomorrow. So
tickets go on sale tomorrow. And I just checked, there's only 112 left because we've had our veterans have already bought about 300 of them. So if people are trying to join Weekend Warrior, this may not be posted by then. But for those that are watching it live, get on it quick because they'll probably be gone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Got to get on it, Trey.
Yeah, seriously.
I want to say that I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Trey? Because I feel like
No, please
go
ahead.
To Zan forever and ever. That story gave me goosebumps, and I love that that's what you chose to read today. And I want to just really thank you for being here and doing what you do and bringing that to our show today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, so good.
Yeah, I really need everybody to be in the same room sometime. So everybody, we'll figure this out. We have to do that castle thing that we were talking about.
Where everybody just comes to Weekend Warrior and we all just form a giant shield wall and then have a party in the tavern in the evening.
Okay, let's do that. So everybody that's listening, everybody that's been on the show, go buy a ticket to Weekend Warrior tomorrow, July 1st. And hopefully by then there'll be some left. And weekendwarriorexperience.com. Thank you, Zan.
Thank y'all so much. I'll see you again soon.
Okay, yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Oh.
That was amazing.
I will be honest, I was not aware of that author. So, I mean, that's so cool. And I mean, that writing was so evocative, like just the imagery itself. So to your point that you said a moment, he really doesn't waste a single verse.
And Zan seems to have such a handle on it. Like, I love that he is as immersed in that as he is, because what a better person to deliver that.
Yes.
That was glorious.
I think you can kind of tell, like, if someone's very versed in Shakespeare or has done their research to be involved in Shakespeare, they know everything about what is being said, the context and everything. So if you can recite that with that level of knowledge and then have more to expound on, like, what a master of your craft. So,
and how nice to hear the story behind it. I liked the idea that, well, and it's not even the idea, it seems very much real that this was their apocalypse. Like, if that were to happen here right now, we would feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had apocalypse like situations throughout history where we feel the impending or potential doom of what were to happen if. And for that story, obviously, he's in the middle of it, literally, like, it's happening. to the utmost. And so it kind of creates something relatable, whether it's a tax code or some kind of actual, my house is in ruins kind of apocalypse. So yeah.
I think the thing that we think about the moment and we bring up those memories of being in that moment. But for me, and through a lot of the conversations I've had with people, is but we continued. And a lot through that story of all of this imagery in the face of this person who still hardened their heart with hope, continued on and then found a way forward. And I think that that's a really good message to share with our listening audiences, even in times of strife and apocalypse or apocalyptic-like situations, there's always a path forward. Mm-hmm. It just may not be present in that exact moment when you're peeking out from, behind some shields. It's true.
I love that you did that. It's great.
Be cool.
Well, speaking about, and Josh said, what a great message to persevere and to hope in the face of destruction. That's gonna be my banner, is to harden my heart, in hope. I think that's, what a fabulous way to look at that. But speaking of, what was it? What did you put? What did you say? Speaking of, steeping in Shakespeare, I guess. Our next guest is Chris Hunter, who is one of the most steeped in Shakespeare humans that I know.
I don't know about that, but
Chris,
I do.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No.
I was just going to say I've taught it for years, and I might actually get to teach it again real soon. So that's
exciting.
Yeah, with the change in our English curriculum this year, I might be able to sneak Hamlet back in at the end of the year. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
I hope you get to. That'll be great.
Yep.
For those that are listening, I'm so sorry, Chris, to cut you off. You may recognize Chris from several of our live readings of different Shakespeare selections. Most recently was our bottom in our production of Midsummer Night's Dream.
The way you said
I know.
Right.
As soon as I said it, good Lord. But that is the title of a character. That is the title of the character. Perhaps I should have maybe gone with the other character that you also portrayed first in order to set that up properly. But you know what? Egg on my face for that.
No, it was funny. It was funny.
So with that slight faux pas out of the way, Chris, I do have to ask, what did you have prepared for us today?
Well, I was sitting here trying to figure out how to do a transition between what we just had and where I'm going. I've got a short story today about my mother and father. I'm in there just a tiny bit, but it's about my mom and dad. And the only transition I could come up with, besides a cheesy Monty Python line, and now for something completely different, was that idea of facing something apocalyptic and then persevering, because that would be my dad. He survived World War II, and the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child, and yet remarried and had a second family, and that's where I come from. So this is a story from when I was a child, but it's about my mom and dad. And that's what I have to share today. And it's hopefully a little lighter hearted than some of the fare we've had before.
Go for it.
Are we ready to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the title of this piece is called What'll You Bet Me? It was a beautiful April morning in 1979. The world was just beginning to turn green, but there were no leaves yet on the trees. Mary and George were getting their son ready for school. "Here's your coat and your school bag," Mary said. "Ah, Mom," whined Chris. "I don't need a coat today. It's warm out." "Okay," Mary responded. "Here's your school bag. You better get to the end of the road. The bus will be here soon." "Okay. Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad." "Bye, son," George hollered from the back room. "Have a great day," Mary said as Chris bounded out the door and headed up the driveway. George strolled into the kitchen, and they watched their son run to the end of the road and board the bus. "He is right, you know," said George. "It's going to be a beautiful day. I think we should go fishing." "I like that idea," responded Mary. "I'll pack a lunch. You go get the gear ready." "Yes, ma'am," said George, and was out the door. An hour later, George picked up the old Alumacraft canoe off the trailer and carried it down to the Sauk River. After a couple more trips, he and Mary had the rods, paddles, bait, and lunch in the canoe and were ready to launch. George steadied the canoe as Mary clambered to the front seat and got her paddle ready. Then he slid the canoe a bit farther out into the water. As he climbed in, he pushed off, and they were out into the current below the big culverts. They spun the canoe downstream, and away they went under a glorious blue sky. They stopped at the first hole they came to. George baited both their poles, and plop, plop, 2 bobbers were floating in the eddy at the back of the hole. But nobody was home. George pulled the anchor, and they headed on downstream toward the lake. The next hole they came to yielded about the same as the first. "Maybe we're just too soon," said George. This was the 3rd warm day in a row, but apparently that just wasn't enough this year. Still, it was a beautiful spring day. "I'd rather be out here catching nothing than at home doing laundry," Mary said. "You got that right," George replied. "Let's try one more spot." With that, he pulled the anchor yet again, and they headed farther downstream. While they were traveling, Mary informed George that she was tired of watching a bobber. "Would you please tie on my favorite yellow jig?" "Well, let's see if I have one small enough for crappies," George responded. They anchored opposite a high bank of mostly brown grass with a rocky hole at its base. George took Mary's rod and tied on a 16th-ounce yellow bucktail jig, her favorite. She took the rod back and made her first cast. Bam! George had been threading a new worm onto his hook when he felt the canoe lurch and looked up to see Mary's rod doubled over. A bass rocketed into the air along the opposite bank, its emerald green back and black lateral stripe glistening in the spring sun. A few minutes later, she brought it alongside the canoe, and George held it up admiringly. "Nice fish, dear. Too bad it's out of season." And with that, he tossed it back. Smiling, Mary made another cast. Bam! George still hadn't gotten a line in the water, and the canoe shook again. And another nice bass was tail walking across the pool. They admired and released that one too. George finally got to make a cast, but so did Mary. Bam! Her rod doubled over again. And again, another gorgeous bucket mouth was flying through the air. George cranked in his line and landed Mary's third bass. He unhooked and released it and shook his head. "Wow, you're on a roll." Mary's next cast was on the way before George even got to pick his rod up again. He watched as she hopped the jig once, twice, 3 times. Bam! What the heck, he said. This process went on 3 more times before George spoke again. I'll bet you can't do that again, he sneered. What'll you bet me? She retorted. George thought for a moment. How about a new spring outfit? He said defiantly. You're on. And with that, cast number 8 was on its way across the river. It landed. Mary began her jigging retrieve. 1 hop, 2, 3, 4. George's confidence was growing, and then bam! Mary's rod doubled over again, and soon George hoisted a bass number 8 from the water. Mary triumphantly grinned at him from the bow. We'll be going shopping tomorrow, she said sweetly. Hours later, George and Mary were sitting under the big elm tree in the yard waiting as the school bus pulled up to the end of the driveway and Chris came bounding down the road to them. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad, he yelled as he got close. What'd you guys do today? George sat back in his chair and matter-of-factly said, We went fishing. For a moment, Chris looked disappointed because they went without him. But he had to know. What'd you catch? George looked at Mary and said, Well, tell him. It's your story. Well, fishing started out kind of tough, but then we got into some bass, Mary began. You mean you got into some bass, George interrupted. Mary shot him a look, but continued. I caught 7 bass in 7 casts. What'd you catch them on? Chris blurted out. A yellow jig, Mary answered and continued. So after the 7th one, your dad bet me that I couldn't do it again. What'd you bet her, Dad? Before George even had a chance to respond, Mary smoothly continued, a new spring outfit. A dress didn't seem like much of a bet to a 6-year-old, but he had to know. What, did you win, Mom? Honey, not only did I win, I caught 7 more in a row. Chris began doing the arithmetic in his head. You mean you caught 14 bass in 14 casts, Mom? Yes. Dad, what'd you catch? The question was followed by silence. George had a sour look on his face. I didn't catch a thing. The next day, George and Mary went shopping. The end.
Oh, yes. Oh.
That's wonderful.
And she not only did that to my dad, she did something similar to me. She did something similar to one of my older brothers. Yes, her fishing days are kind of behind her, but Mom has a reputation. Let's put it that way.
Was it this yellow jig that was the key to this, or is she
Yellow,
just magical?
Well, we sometimes referred to her as the fish whisperer. When we would ice fish, she would actually, because we could see down the hole, you could see the fish swimming around, and she'd be like, come on, bite it. And sure enough, up, she could talk them into it. It never worked for me. But yeah, a yellow bucktail jig, that was, for a lot of stuff, that was her thing. But yellow was also her color. I mean, if you looked at her musky baits, a lot of them were yellow. Pretty much, yeah, if you were going to buy a bait from my mom, it better have yellow on it somewhere.
Sounds like maybe another certain somebody that we know that likes the color yellow. Well, bees, more
Bees.
specific.
Yeah.
Bees
Oh, I was like,
specifically.
I don't know if he's talking about me or not.
No, I am. Yes.
I like yellow.
Well, there's all those favorite colors. Now, my wife, when she and I go fishing, everything's great as long as it's blue.
Oh.
And she will do just like my mom. She will kick my butt with a blue lure. I've come to accept it, kind of like Dad.
Come to accept it. That's funny. Have you ever tried using the same lures just to see if?
Well, I'll just real quick. When Mom did it to me, it was when Shad Raps first hit the market. Anyone in the audience that's a angler will probably recognize that lure name.
Okay.
When they first hit the market, you couldn't buy one. In fact, bait shops were renting them out because they were such a thing. But we managed to find one. Dad bought it for Mom, and she absolutely obliterated me with it. And then afterward said, "Here, honey, I'll let you take it out and use it after supper tonight." And so she gave me the lure, and I actually went out and caught some fish, and I was kind of mollified by that. But as far as did I ever have the touch she had, no.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that it wasn't just the lure. That's great.
Yeah. But
So I do have to ask, what did you said that your mom pulled out that saying, what will you bet me on you? What did you bet your mom?
well, okay.
Oh.
In my case, it wasn't a bet.
Okay.
It was more like we were fishing and she does this, I'm going to catch a bass now. And in a couple casts, she put a bass in the boat and I'm going, what the heck? And I'm switching lures and fishing. And then she says, now I'm going to catch a northern. A couple casts later, boom, she's got a northern in the boat.
She's like
Or
eight ball in
pike.
the corner pocket.
Exactly. And I'm switching lures. And then she says, now I'm going to catch a walleye. And she did it. And when
Oh.
she got done calling 3 fish in a row on me, I literally threw my rod down in the bottom of the boat and said, I'm done. And I just quit fishing. I was probably so the story I read, I was about 6. The one I just told you, I was about 12.
I love this.
Yep.
This is fantastic.
Yep.
Josh said, "Mom with the trifecta."
Yeah, for sure.
Gosh. The only time I have ever been fishing was on a mission trip. I had never been fishing before that. They were taking a group of 13-year-olds in the same Sunday school class together on an overnight trip to go camping, go fishing, and be out on this lake. It's the first time I've ever been camping or fishing.
Mm-hmm.
I caught 2 fish the entire night. That's it. And I have never used that fishing rod since.
Do you still have it?
Probably somewhere, but I might, or we might have actually donated it. But regardless, it has been in storage probably since I was 13, and that was many, many moons ago.
Just a couple moons ago.
Just a couple, like 2 weeks. It's fine.
We won't talk about how many rods there are out in my garage. We just won't go there.
I am going to bring it up though. How many fishing rods are there in your garage?
I would say several dozen.
Wow.
Yep. Because I fish for everything from panfish and trout on the small end all the way up through muskies, and I do it both with regular tackle and fly fishing. So yeah, I'm kind of a nerd.
I think everybody that was on here tonight is some level of nerd, but in great ways.
Yes.
This is why we're all friends.
Yep.
I do have a question, like from a storytelling aspect, because you have been, you not only told a story that you wrote, you're also a great interpreter of Shakespeare works. So, from a storytelling aspect, what are some things that you like to look for in those stories, and what are some things that you point out to your students that you're teaching?
Ooh. I really like to try to get to the humanity of the characters, and like get the little glimpses, like, and if I'm reading the story out loud, like I was here, to a class, try to put that emotion into those lines so that the kids pick up on that. And, like if you're reading from Hamlet, let's say in the original Shakespeare, you're trying to, even though they might not understand all the language, if you put the right emotional inflection into it, they'll get it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess, that's what I really want to bring across, either in a story that I write, is to try to bring that humanity out in those characters, or in a story someone else has written, try to bring that to the fore. I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does.
Okay.
And I think it speaks to a lot of the other guests with similar sentiments of, let's get to the humanity, so we make that connection with somebody. Because kind of without that, it's just a very, very flat, static sort of experience.
Well, and I think I heard you guys mention earlier about every person that reads a piece, we all bring our own lens to a piece. And that's something I always try to tell my students is, if it doesn't matter if we're reading poetry or reading a story, I tell them, you are going to see a story in a different way than I do, because you're going to bring your personal experiences to bear on the events in that story. And that's perfectly okay. There's no one perfect interpretation of anything.
Right.
So 100%. Chris, I want to thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your insights on that. For everyone, for our listening audience, where can they go to support you, follow you, do something to support you as both an artist and an educator?
Oh my goodness. Believe it or not, I have no social media presence. As a teacher, I've just kind of shied away from that, because I don't want my students snooping around and having a lot of access into my private life. So I will say this, my goal somewhere down the road here is to try and publish a collection of poetry and short stories. I haven't gotten there yet. When I do, I'll let you know.
Oh, and we can have you on the show to talk about it.
Yes.
Exactly.
That would be fabulous.
Oh, yes. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on with us and sharing your stories and sharing what sounds like a future publication to come.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I was not expecting that, but something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then we can say, we knew him when.
Right. Exactly. We knew him before he had social media. Our next guest is someone I have been waiting for a long time to hear from, because it's somebody I haven't seen or talked to in so long. It's someone that is kind of an enigma in his own right, but also with a level of brilliance and humanity, compassion, and honesty. I would like to introduce to the show our very own Trey Pittman.
Oh, Emily, it's been so long. I can't believe we've waited this long to talk to each other.
Sorry if you could hear Velvet thought it was her. Velvet, no, your turn comes another time. She's back here yelling.
Well, hello. For my selections today, I wanted to do bookends of the thought of love through time. I have always been attracted to the sonnets of Shakespeare and the works of Shakespeare. And very recently, I have been attracted to the works and writings of Oscar Wilde. So I have 2 sonnets that I'd like to read from Shakespeare and 2 poems I'd like to read from Oscar Wilde.
Awesome.
So, sonnet number 15. When I consider everything that grows, holds in perfection but a little moment, that this huge stage presenteth not, but shows whereon the stars and secret influence comment, when I perceive that men as plants increase, cheered and checked even by the same sky, vaunt in their youthful sap at height decrease, and wear their brave state out of memory, then the conceit of this inconstant stay sets you most rich in youth before my sight, where wasteful time debateth with decay to change your day of youth to sullied night, and all in war with time for love of you, as he takes from you, I engraft you new.
Very nice.
Thank you. Okay.
I feel like sometimes it takes me a minute to react because I'm still absorbing. So forgive me for that pause.
No. Sonnet number 23. As an unperfect actor on the stage, who with his fears put beside his part, or some fierce thing replete with too much rage, whose strength's abundance weakens his own heart, so I for fear of trust forget to say the perfect ceremony of love's rite, and in mine own love's strength seems to decay, o'ercharged with burden of mine own love's might. Oh, let my looks be then the eloquence and dumb presagers of my speaking breast, who plead with love and look for recompense. More than that tongue that more hath more expressed. Oh, learn to read with what silent love hath writ, to hear with eyes belonging to love's fine wit.
That's me clapping for our listening only audience.
Thank you. I love Shakespeare in general, with how much he talks about love, and it's with this, the way that you look at somebody throughout time is always changing, and especially with the first sonnet that he had, with every time time takes away from you, I engraft you anew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because people are always changing, what you love about them changes with it. And it's like, oh, I found this that I now love about you. And so that's kind of what speaks to me.
Very, very well done.
Thank you. And then 2 from Oscar Wilde. The first one is Flowers of Love. I will not read his full name, but Oscar Wilde. Sweet, I blame you not, for mine the fault was. Had I not been made of common clay, I had climbed the higher heights unclimbed, yet seen the fuller air, the larger day. From the wildness of my wasted passion, I had struck a better, clearer song, lit some lighter light of freer freedom, battled with some hydra-headed wrong. Had my lips been smitten into music by the kisses that but made them bleed, you had walked with Bice and the angels on that verdant and enameled mead. I had trod the road which Dante treads, saw the suns of 7 circles shine. I, perchance, had seen the heavens opening as they open for Florentine. And the mighty nations who have crowned me, who am crownless now and without name, and some orient dawn and found me kneeling on the threshold of House of Fame. I had sat within that marble circle where the oldest bard is as the young, and the pipe is ever dropping honey and the lyre's strings are ever strung. Keats had lifted up his hymnal curls from out the poppy-seeded wine, with ambrosial mouth had kissed my forehead, clasped with the hand of noble love in mine. And at springtide, when the apple blossoms brush with the burdened bosom of the dove, 2 young lovers lying in an orchard would have read the story of our love, would have read the legend of my passion, known the bitter secret of my heart, kissed as we have kissed, but never parted as we two are fated now to part. For the crimson flower of our life is eaten by the cankerworm of truth, and no hand can gather up the fallen withered petals of the rose of youth. Yet I am not sorry that I loved you. Ah, what else had I a boy to do? For the hungry teeth of time devour, and the silent-footed years pursue. Rudderless we drift athwart a tempest, and once the storm of youth is past, without lyre, without lute or chorus, death, the silent pilot, comes at last. And within the grave there is no pleasure, for the blindworm battens on the root, and desire shudders into ashes, and the tree of passion bears no fruit. Ah, what else had I to do but love you? God's own mother was less dear to me, and less dear the Cyreithian rising like an argent lily from the sea. I have made my choice, have lived my poems, and, though youth is gone and wasted days, I have found the lover's crown of myrtle better than the poet's crown of bays. The next one is Roses and Rue to LL. Could we dig up this long-buried treasure, were it worth the pleasure? We never could learn love's song, we are parted too long. Could the passion past that is fled call back its dead? Could we live it all over again, were it worth the pain? I remember we used to meet by an ivied seat, and you warbled each pretty word with the air of a bird, and your voice had a quaver in it like a linnet, and shook as the blackbird's throat with its last big note. And your eyes, they were green and gray like an April day, but lit into amethyst when I stooped and kissed. And your mouth, it would ever smile for a long, long while. Then it rippled all over with laughter 5 minutes after. You were always afraid of a shower, just like a flower. I remember you started and ran when the rain began. I remember I could never catch you, for no one could match you. You had a wonderful, luminous, fleet little wings to your feet. I remember your hair. Did I tie it? For it always ran riot. Like a tangled sunbeam of gold, these things are old. I remember so well the room and the lilac bloom that beat at the dripping pane in the warm June rain. And the color of your gown, it was amber brown, and 2 yellow satin bows from your shoulders rose. And a handkerchief of French lace which you held to your face, had it a small tear left a stain, or was it the rain? On your hand as it waved adieu, there were veins of blue. In your voice as it said goodbye was a petulant cry, you have only wasted your life. Ah, that was the knife. When I rushed through the garden gate, it was all too late. Could we live it over again, were it worth the pain? Could the passionate past that is fled call back its dead? Well, if my heart must break, dear love, for your sake, it will break in music, I know, poets' hearts break so. But strange that I was not told that the brain can hold in an ivory cell God's heaven and hell.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a little whimsical too, and I like that kind of how it played at the beginning.
Kind of with the, like, we think of beauty as being just very surface level sometimes, but then to have that imagery kind of expounded on, almost kind of what you were saying, that sort of ethereal like quality that we give to somebody. But it's that memory of that first meeting of somebody, that spark.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what helps to keep things going for me is, as I think to my own current love of just what is that passion like for that other person.
And also that's kind of the difference between like a photograph of somebody versus encountering them or being around them in real life. Like a photograph is that flat kind of, you know, one-dimensional version of them in a like this brief capture versus the nuances that make them deeper than that.
Yeah. My therapist says, when we go out, there's this performative sort of thing that happens whenever we meet somebody, whether it be in a bar or any kind of social setting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's recognizing that there's so much more behind that performance. And that's what we're looking to get to know, is that person underneath.
Absolutely. Yay.
Yay!
That was... You did that very well, and I'm glad you chose that. It was
Thank
a
you.
great theme, and it was a great way to end our show.
Yeah, I would agree. To the guests that we had on today, thank you so much for sharing your artistry with us. It speaks to why we continue to do this show and why people continue to create art. For those that are listening, we hope to have you on the podcast at some point in the future. We hope that you will tune in again and listen to us as we continue to move on. Before we close out the show officially, there is a slight correction to an earlier note. We would like to note that our guest today, Lisa Bowman, is published as Lisa DeVita, so that you are able to find her work.
Yes.
We'll also include that in our show notes just to make sure that you are able to find her and support her as well. This episode, along with probably every other episode, will be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates, announcements, and more, follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thank you, everybody, and go read a poem.
Yes. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a
Thank you
wonderful
for-
day.
Yep. Thank you for joining us.